Chaplain, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, if I may, before we begin the meeting, I'd like to take a moment to remember and honor the life of Sheriff Bob Harvey, who served our community with dedication, integrity, and courage as Burleigh County Sheriff. His leadership left an impact upon our law enforcement and our community. He served as Burleigh County Sheriff from 1974 to 2002. He served in law enforcement for almost 41 years, serving in Bismarck and Burleigh County. He also served our nation in the United States Army for 3 years. One of the most important things to Bob as a law enforcement officer was not only to protect the people of Burleigh County, but also to serve them. This is something that he required of all of his deputies, and it is something that continues today under Sheriff Lieben in the Burleigh County Sheriff's Office. Retired Sheriff Bob Harvey passed away on January 18th, 2025. As I said, he left a lasting impact upon law enforcement, and he served well. He served with courage, honor, and integrity. May we remember him today, and may we also keep his family, colleagues, and loved ones in our thoughts and our prayers. If you would all please join me now in a moment of silence. Father, we come to you in a moment of sadness, remembering the life of a friend, co-worker, mentor, our former Sheriff Bob Harvey. We ask that you'll be with his family. We ask that you'll be with the men and women of the Burleigh County Sheriff's Office. We ask, Father, that you will lift them up, that you will give them a peace which surpasses understanding, and that you'll be with them. Thank you, Father, for his impact that he's had upon our county and upon each of our lives. Pray your blessing upon them. Father, we also pray your blessing upon this meeting tonight. May these commissioners have your wisdom in all that they do as they guide and direct our county. Thank you, Father, for our first responders. Protect them, and our county workers. Be with them and protect them as they perform their duties. Again, God, we give you this evening. We give you this meeting in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. Commissioners, please stand as we direct our attention to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chaplain, and by the way, thank you in presiding over the loss in the Bismarck Police Department as well. Former deputy with, I believe the
Officer Fuller did serve with Burleigh County at the detention center for a few years. So
condolences to the Bismarck Police Department as well.
He will be sorely missed.
With that, call to order the roll call for the Weed Board.
Commissioner Schwab.
Here.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Here.
Commissioner Munson.
Here.
Commissioner Bittner.
Here.
Chairman Bakken.
Here. First item up, approval of agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second.
I can't.
One addendum to
We
the,
need to approve it with a,
yes.
and I think that needs to be put in there. I don't know why, but the companies that bid weren't put in there in the agenda. And Fertilon did not bid on, it's an honest error, but Fertilon did not bid on spraying, and I want that in the agenda, so if they make them corrections, I think we'll be fine.
Okay. Addendum to
What's the amendment?
So, the correction that we had on the misnaming of one of the businesses that bid on the spraying
Okay.
from last Weed Board meeting.
Yep.
So, and you've got the,
Yeah, the company that was called Fertilon is called Greenhead Spring LLC.
Okay.
But the owner of that used to work for Fertilon, so he is licensed, but, you know, they put the company name on these licenses. Doesn't mean he's not licensed now. He is.
it was just a nuance in the reading of that.
Yeah.
So just so the record reflects that that correction is made.
I will amend my motion to include those corrections.
Amended on the second?
Jerry?
Second. Yep.
Perfect. Did you get that? Thank you. All right, with that, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bittner.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Chairman Bakken.
Yes, and then consideration of the January 6, 2025 meeting minutes with that correction in there as well.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bittner.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Chairman Bakken.
Yes, motion carried. Next item up, Burleigh County Weed Officer Johnson.
Good evening, gentlemen. Commissioner Bakken. Tonight, it's a short meeting, as the last one was also, but I'm here to give the award to the person with the, or make a recommendation for the weed spraying for this year. We had the 3 applicants that bid for the 2025 right-of-way contract. It was Kalanick Enterprises, LLC, Anderson Yard Works, and/or Western Excavation, LLC, and then Greenhead Spraying, LLC. Looking over the bids with Commissioner Schwab, we looked at everything, and I went around and I also looked at their properties, looked at the equipment they had in the yards, because some of it's being used and whatnot. But real simple, I guess, unless there's some questions from me going around and looking at their equipment and whatnot, or...
And everything passed as far as the specs for the bids?
Not all of it, but I mean, it wasn't able to see all of it either. I mean, I think they'd all would do a good job, you know, in all, but with what I have here for my recommendation, after reviewing the bids and in consideration of the 3 contract bidders submitted, it'd be my recommendation to accept and award the lower bid submitted from Greenhead Spraying LLC for the Burleigh County's 2025 contract.
Any questions for Officer Johnson?
I have a comment to
Commissioner
make
Schwab?
here. One of the bids, these guys, I don't know how particular we want to be in on bids, but one of them didn't have the envelope lettered right, nothing on the envelope, correct?
No, there wasn't
And-
anything on it. It wasn't addressed the way it was
And
supposed to be.
Then you had mentioned they were talking about pulling tanks with trailers.
Well, they could.
They
That's-
could.
Yeah.
But I don't think we want to get that started. That is, they get down in the ditches and get stuck, and I don't think that's a good idea. But I have no problem with the person that does own Greenhead was spraying our ditches last year under Fertilon, so he knows the territory, and he was a low bidder, so,
Is that a motion to accept that bid?
huh?
Is that a motion to accept that bid?
Yep.
Second.
Second. Motion is second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner?
which company didn't have their name on the outside of the envelope?
That would have been Kalanick Enterprises.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Woodcox?
just a bit of an objection. We get these bids 5 minutes ago, and we look at them, there's no summary, which I've always appreciated from other bids we've gotten. For us to make a decision on this major is tough how can you analyze all these figures in 2 minutes and then say, this is the lowest bid? Because I don't know whether it's the lowest bid or not.
When we opened, at the last meeting, we opened the bids, and the amounts were read off then. And this year, I just put together so you had a format for later or just for your records or whatnot. That's why I brought these.
So these are the 3 that we opened last meeting.
Correct. The
Okay.
bids, yes, and their
Is
bids
it-
are all on there.
Could a summary be compiled from these bids and say, business A is $412 and business B is $712? So we
Oh, yeah.
can.
Yeah,
we do that?
I could do something for you there,
I'd
yeah.
appreciate that, because that's hard to
Okay,
analyze
absolutely.
that.
I'll get that done for you.
Thank you.
Any other discussions?
One more thing,
Call the roll, please.
one more thing.
Oh, go, sir.
This is a 4-year renewable,
Correct.
so there won't be any more bids on this if they renew for 4 years. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier if you kind of have a little spreadsheet on it.
Okay.
But we're still getting organized up there, so.
Marcus does a really nice draft letter. You might want to ask
You're
him.
not gonna hold me to his standards, are you?
I am. I am.
Okay.
You don't have to do it in calligraphy, though. It's
I'll just have him do something with it then.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bittner,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes,
Commissioner Woodcox,
Yes.
Commissioner Munson,
Yes.
Chairman Bakken.
Yes, motion carried. Any other business? I do want to mention the state weed
The
meeting
NDWCA.
is coming up in February. Burleigh County will have a booth at that.
Yeah,
as
that's what
well.
Merlin was saying, he'd have me working a booth there. Or participating somehow to get something out of me, I'm sure so.
Perfect. And I'll be there as well, doing a welcome, so.
Yeah, and it's open, it's the 4th, 5th, and 6th. It's all day, the 4th, all day the 5th, and then the 6th, I believe it goes till noon. So, but anybody can show up and look at the different things
So-
too, so.
It'll be nice, we've got a weed officer there with a booth as well, so just so the public is aware of that. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the January 21st, 2025 meeting of the Burleigh County Commission order. First thing is roll call of members.
Commissioner Schwab,
here.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Here.
Commissioner Munson.
Here.
Commissioner Bakken.
Here.
Chairman Bittner.
Here. Next is consideration of the agenda. Anybody got any changes or concerns or anything else with the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion is second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes,
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, consideration of the December 2nd, 4th, 16th, and 23rd meeting minutes and January 6th, 2024 meeting minutes and bills. Commissioners?
we've already done this, haven't we?
No.
We pulled some of them last meeting.
That's right, that's right.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Woodcock?
the one meeting that we had that I objected to the minutes was the meeting where our state auditor was here, and I had asked him specifically the question about whether or not the state looks at our investments as far as dollar, or the interest rate, the terms, and that type of thing, the whole investment package, and they do not look at that at all, and that was not in the minutes, and I don't see it in there again. Was it added into was it changed?
I'll go ahead and I'll review the video of that meeting to see
Please
exactly
do.
what was said, and I'll make sure if that was said as added.
Please do, because
Which meeting was that?
I'm not sure.
That'd been the special meeting on the 23rd, I believe, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, other than that, I'll move we approve the minute changes, except for that one particular item.
On the 23rd?
Do you want that tabled for the next meeting then, for reconsideration?
For the 23rd?
Yes.
I'd move to table the 23rd.
Second.
Motion is second to table until the 23rd.
Just the 23rd.
Just the 23rd meeting. Just the 23rd meeting to the next meeting. Call the roll.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes,
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes. Motion to table that one to the next meeting. Now what about the rest?
Did you make a motion to approve the rest of them?
No, the motion was to
Commissioner
table
Wilcox?
that one till the
He had made
next.
the motion to approve all but the 23rd,
No, I'll second that.
and then you made the motion to table the 23rd.
Table that, so I'll second his initial motion
Okay.
for all but the 23rd.
Okay, give me a second.
As long as you're looking that up, I do have a problem with these minutes when there's adjectives to stress somebody's opinion in them.
That's what I was,
And
that you brought that up.
I didn't have time to go through all of these minutes, but I believe on the first meeting of December, there was a proven, that shouldn't have been in there, item, and there, another one item in there was the chair brazenly went
Yeah.
to this next thing, and if they're in there, we're gonna revisit, because opinions are not supposed to be in minutes. Minutes are supposed to be transcribed the way things were said.
Right, and there was another section in the December,
Who is doing the minutes? That's the question.
Auditor Splonskowski, want to answer that?
I have a member of my office who does it, since Lisa Hart used to do it. Since she left, we have a new person who's writing them, and I review them. However, we have been working on using less adjectives.
Okay, basically, I have an issue with just two words in,
There were several.
you have several?
There were several words, like 10.
Yeah.
One of them was, they swiftly moved on to another subject or something like that. It was really not necessary, I guess, is what.
Okay, I think, I don't know, based on just the fact that I see something that I don't agree with, I'm not going to be able to support the motion to approve the meeting minutes. Any other discussion?
Do you want to table
All of it?
all of it until those are
Yeah,
corrected?
I didn't have time to watch the
Okay.
tapes and to go through, and quite frankly, we shouldn't have to. I think-
I'll withdraw my second then, if you want to withdraw your motion.
Withdraw my motion.
I would move to table all of the minutes until the language is cleaned up.
Okay. I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion, and a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes,
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries to table. Okay. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda. There's abatement, special event permit.
Sure, how about bills?
Good catch, good catch. Did anybody have a chance to review the bills?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Woodcock.
I did review the bills today, and I approved all of them, so I would move that we pay the bills and the minutes we took care of. Just pay the bills, please.
Second.
A motion, a second to pay the bills. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
yes,
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries. Next then is the consent agenda. There's abatement, special event permits, second access permit requests. Is there anything on the consent agenda you want to pull out for discussion?
Move to approve the consent agenda in its entirety.
Second.
I have a motion, and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
yes,
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 6, County Engineer Hall. We got second approach permits, Ryan Slew authorization for bids, Highway 10 and 80th Street project. Welcome, Marcus.
Good evening, Commissioners. Under the consent agenda, you did approve 2 access permits, and those permits are put on the consent agenda when they meet all of our criteria.
I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah. In this particular case, there's a second approach request that did not meet our criteria. And so as under our policy, the county highway department denies that permit, but they're allowed to appeal that to the county board. And I put that together and bring it to the county board as an agenda item, basically. This particular agenda item is a permit that was on Shoal Drive. I put a map in your packet, and I show where the driveway placements are being proposed. The driveway center-to-center distance, our criteria is 100 feet. In this particular case, it's more around 80 feet, therefore it was rejected. This is a low-volume, low-speed roadway. I don't necessarily see that there's a great decrease in our safety by approving this second approach, but that is the county board's call on that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Schwab?
You know, there's a lot of buildings in there with even more narrow. If we let one do it, are we gonna have a problem?
Commissioners, as far as additional approaches being put in, I think we'll cross that bridge when the time comes if we have problems. So
Yeah, do we want?
generally speaking, historically, our second approaches have been spread out pretty good in neighborhoods and stuff, and we haven't seen a lot of clustering of them. You never know when that might take place, but
I hate to build a bridge here.
Yeah. Did anybody have a chance to drive out there by chance?
I did. Marcus, what was the setback for that second approach from the intersection?
from the intersection of the other one,
Yeah.
okay, the two approaches about 80 feet apart, center to center is what
Okay.
they're looking at. Yep.
So do we have an issue with setback from transportation perspective from the intersection setback?
Okay, so the one that we're looking at is not one close to the intersection.
Right,
Th-
okay.
This is the other one.
The other one,
Yeah,
okay.
yep, so,
Okay, and we're good on that?
yeah, we're good on that, yep.
Okay.
How close?
I did drive out there and I was trying to get a judgment of the distance and I drove it from all directions and I didn't see an issue with it, the way it was laid out.
Commissioners, I'd like to add, the distance from an intersection is a critical factor for us. And in those particular situations, we had non-access lines drawn in as when the plat was approved. And those approaches that they were proposing were beyond the non-access lines. So we were in good shape that way.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Woodcox?
I looked at it too, and I couldn't even see, I didn't think it was 80 feet apart. They looked like more than that, so I see no objection to it. I move we approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion?
I have one. How
Commissioner
wide
Schwartz.
is that lot at the road?
how wide is the lot itself? I
At the road.
don't have that information handy, I don't believe. No, I don't have that information
It
handy.
does look to me like it's as small as one, so, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I would, personally, I'm not gonna vote against it, but it seems like such a narrow lot that why would you even want a second access with? you
Come
just-
off of that driveway.
Yeah, like the neighbor. If you look at the neighbor, how it's set up, he comes in and he, I don't know, but I don't have a problem with it. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Schwab,
Damn if you do, damn if you don't. Yes,
Commissioner Woodcox?
Yes.
Commissioner Munson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken?
Yes.
Chairman Bittner?
No, just for the heck of it.
The next item I have on the agenda is authorizing the county auditor and the county engineer to advertise for a project. During the presentation and preparation and gathering of all the information to put the 2025 budget together, Brian Slough Force Main project was approved as part of that process. We've been working on the plans, we've got the plans together, and we're ready to advertise for bids now. We will be using American Rescue funds on this particular project. There's a proposed resolution in your packet, I'd recommend approval.
Commissioners?
Move to approve. Oh, second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the authorization for bids for Brian Slough. Any further discussion? Seeing
Mr.
none,
Chairman.
call, Commissioner Woodcox?
ARP funding, has that been approved previously that we,
Commissioners, this was one of on the first round of ARPA money, this project was included in that approval.
okay,
Yeah,
not anything new?
no,
Okay.
this is nothing new. This was approved in
Same
the
with the
original
next one,
packet.
I'll ask, same question on the next one. I assume that says ARP fund, oh, it's Prairie Dog fund.
That's Prairie
Okay.
Dog, yep.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Woodcox?
Yes.
Commissioner Munson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab?
yes,
Chairman Bittner?
Yes, motion carries.
The next item is another approval to go to bids. On November 18th, we added the Highway 10 and 80th Street intersection project. This is basically adding some turn lanes to that particular location. We've been working on the plans. Plans are ready to go. We'd like to go ahead and advertise for bids. That will be Prairie Dog money used on that particular project. There is a proposed resolution in your packet, and I'd recommend approval.
move to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? I have some. Go ahead, Commissioner Whitcutt.
You said prairie dog funding from this 25 or 24?
This will be the 2025 money.
Do we know what that amount is?
Approximately $4,200,084.
Okay.
That's the total amount of prairie dog
Right,
money.
right.
Yep.
Have we committed anything to that other than this? Yeah?
Commissioners, basically what we've set aside is this particular project, the microsurfacing project, which is the next project we'll
Right.
talk about. And then the remainder of that, we're looking to use in 2026 in completing or extending the work we've been doing on Apple Creek Road, the subsurface work and strengthening and paving of Apple Creek Road. So,
Okay, so I travel that intersection just about every day, if not multiple times. Can you tell me where you're putting the turn lanes?
Commissioners, that's going to be left and rights on all four legs of that particular intersection.
Left and right. So if I'm coming up 80th, there's gonna be a turn lane, like you're gonna widen out 80th. If I'm facing north,
Yep,
you're gonna widen out 80th and put a turn lane there to go,
to take a
East.
left, yep, and a right. So,
Won't be one for a left, would there?
well, you know, you rarely see any stacking on that south side, and so I was just curious.
And
'Cause
that
if
was-
it's- I can understand the turn lanes off of the actual Highway 10. I just, in my mind, don't know why we would have all the,
yeah, Commissioners, as part of that whole process, we did have a traffic study done, and that's what that indicated is those lanes should be added. And I think that has to do more with the fact that when that gas station goes in, that's going to create enough traffic that way that may be required at that time. So, well, since we're doing the project, we wanted to do it all at the same time, so.
okay, I'm okay with that.
Better know about.
Yeah. Hey,
Mr.
except
Chairman,
in the roundabout case, then that would give me right of way over the other stuff, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Woodcock.
You're talking about 80th Street and Highway 10, right?
That's-
In the
that's-
northeast corner of that, there's about 6 different communication boxes, all kinds. We won't be affecting those at all.
We'll be working around and with the utility companies on dealing with those.
Do we pay for that when we have to move?
Those, I believe, are all within the existing right-of-way, so those
I think
they pay for, yeah.
So those what? Who pays for those?
It depends on the location. I believe those are all within
Right.
the existing right-of-way, so they pay for moving of those types of
Oh, okay.
utilities. If we were expanding out,
That's what I was afraid we were gonna do,
yeah,
is
if we were
expand.
expanding out
They would hit
and they were
those.
outside of our existing right-of-way and we made them move, then we pay for that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay, any further discussion? Do have a motion right now.
We have a motion and a
I think we
second.
did.
Yeah, okay. Call the roll.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Commissioner Woodcock.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries.
The third item I have is during the 2025 budget process, we added some microsurfacing projects to the budget. We've been working on those particular projects. They're ready to go, and we were asking for authorization to advertise for bids on those projects. Here again, this money, these projects will be funded with prairie dog funding. There's a proposed resolution. I'd recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? How much are we into the available prairie dog funding then with these estimated?
That's roughly, with those two projects, it's roughly 40% of that 4.million, so.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Commissioner Woodcock.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick, can I make a
Commissioner
quick
Woodcock.
question? What's the status on the roundabout on Centennial Road and 71st? The big intersection with the curve, is that 71st?
71st and the
And-
big curve, yeah?
yeah.
Yeah, that project was killed when we didn't have matching funds.
Right, but it's still dead. We
It's still
haven't-
dead.
Okay.
Thank you. But you could bust loose some of that retirement money there, Commissioner.
I'll give half if you give half.
Okay. County Planner Flanagan, RRH subdivision, final subdivision and zoning change. Welcome, Mitch.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. This is presenting the January 8th Planning Commission recommendations for the RR8 subdivision. This is a single lot subdivision that contains 19.823 acres. It also had a zone change from ag to C district or commercial. The owner's intention is to build a travel shop and country store. It's located in Sterling Township. The final plat comments were sent on December 18th. The stormwater management plan was approved on December 2nd. Public hearing was held at the January 8th meeting. No paving waiver was required because it's located on Highway 14, right north of I-94. 8 revisions were made for the preliminary and final plats to meet the ordinances of Article 33. Based on the supporting documents, I would recommend approval of the RH subdivision.
Commissioner Schwab.
Mitch, are they gonna have enough, we don't have, let me start over. They're gonna have to have a rural water system in there, right? A septic tank system?
Lagoon.
A what?
Lagoon,
A lagoon.
right. Yeah, it's, the lagoon is almost half that lot. Really, it's a large lagoon, yeah. It's, they're still under review by the DEQ, which we would have to wait for building permits until we see that approval. It's to the south side of the lot.
Be interested to see what the neighbors say about that.
Well, that's a concern, really.
Yeah.
Because, the winter time, not so bad. But in the
Skating
spring,
rink.
when it first opens up, then she gets pretty raw. I did have a question also, but go ahead.
It's on the monitor, Commissioners. It's that dashed line on the south side.
So is there any provisions you know of to keep vehicles out of there? I mean, I would think there would be, but is there?
That I don't know. We'd have to discuss that with them. I'm sure that there's got to be some kind of pedestrian vehicle protection there because it's going to be a parking lot and buildings. And lots of gas stations are popular, so they're going to be a lot of people stopping there. So I would think that they'd have to have at least a fence, some kind of barrier to keep people out of it and cars.
Can we require that? Can we require that?
I think we
Or
could.
is that before the building permit or whatever goes in?
Yeah.
Possibly. We could ask the DEQ what they have for recommendations from its fence is not a building, but if that's a recommendation of approval of this plat, then we could include it in there.
Right. I personally would like to see something that, we had a good reason to believe that nobody's going to drive in there. And, I mean, there may be citizens, and I don't know if there's anybody in the room that wants to talk about it, but maybe citizens in the neighborhood that might have an issue with it. I don't know. I know there is a gas station and, Senex and some other stuff across the road. I don't know.
To the south on 83, they have a lagoon as well. This is mandated by the DEQ. The septic system wouldn't be large enough for it.
So is that other,
Go ahead,
is
Commissioner.
that other business, was that grandfathered in, or was that DEQ specs as well?
They had their lagoon fixed last year, about 2 years ago. DEQ made them upgrade their lagoon system.
Okay, was there any, did they make them do any fencing or anything like that for separation? Because I'd hate to hold somebody to a different standard.
I don't know, I'm not sure.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Munson.
According to Google Earth, there's no fence around that lagoon.
So it's
That
just a
that
berm
I can
and,
see, it's a berm,
okay.
and that's it.
Also, do you know, I guess I could have asked that planning commission, but do you know if there's is there a part of a stormwater management plan or a site plan that revolves around the like the oil and fuel that might wash off of the pavement and the concrete. You know, the reason I ask is because the Cenexes and whatnot, I talked to the Cenex guy that they have a containment, I don't know what, a pit, you know, so that if it fills with debris or oil or fuel or something, then they pump it out. And so,
Well, yeah, the stormwater management plan, it deals with impervious surfaces, so that's basically the concrete around that, and it should have a containment area for that oil and water from polluting that water, or even the lagoon system too as well.
I would agree that it should, but do you know if it does?
That was not brought up at the meeting. I'm not sure if Casey did the review on it. I'm not sure.
Should be part of DEQ specs.
There,
Should.
Should be.
there were,
Doesn't mean it is.
you know, talk about
We got burned.
drain water and stuff in here, but the print is so small I couldn't even read it. So I think we got to table this. The other thing is, how are the weeds controlled around that?
The weed control?
Yeah,
It's an empty lot right now. I'm not
well,
sure.
yeah, I know, but I mean, when a lagoon would be
After
put
it's
in, we
built, I'm
have,
sure they still have to follow the, you know, in the century code requirements for weed control, noxious weeds.
I think so.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wood.
are they planning on construction this construction season? You know?
I believe so.
Okay.
I haven't seen a building permit yet, and I told them that they need
So,
one.
Is this regulatory body the ones that should be making all those specifications and comments, or where should that be coming from? The state environmental quality?
The DEQ may have requirements for protection of lagoons. I'm not aware of it right now. I could find that out though.
Okay.
But
Is there any harm in waiting until the next meeting?
I don't, sure, I mean, I have not seen a set of building plans or anything for this permit app, nothing, so.
Okay,
I mean-
I'd particularly like to know more about that, whether they will have that, that detention feature that catches oil and fuel and whatnot, because I was doing a job site where this lady asked me about that because of a big parking lot that went in uphill from her. And she went and showed me that the water that has come down that hill really does put an oil sheen and a shine on the water that's in her backyard, as far as that backed up, you know, water where it's supposed to be going down the creek and before it eventually gets out of there. And it was pretty substantial.
Yeah, DEQ should be able to, or close approximation of an answer for those, because one is the containment of the lagoon and also any kind of pollution or pollutants that could go into that.
I sure think so, Commissioner Bakken.
I'd move to table this until our next meeting, just to get that other information. One, the DEQ specs, and make sure that, again, I'm cognizant of the fact I don't want to hold somebody to a different standard than what's required with that lagoon system as well, and then what that hard surface ponding would be. If there's anything else that anybody wants added onto those questions, feel free.
Those are the main questions I had, really.
Second.
A motion and a second, you understood, but
Yep, thank you.
any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Schwab,
no, yes,
Woodcox,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Bakken.
Yes.
Chairman Bender.
Yes. Motion to table carries, waiting on information. Sheriff Lieben, quarterly report. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So sometimes I feel like Groundhog Day. I come up and give you this quarterly jail report, and sometimes a lot doesn't change. But this time I've got some good information. The average daily population is 268. That's about where it's running. If you remember pre-COVID, I talked about that 300 plus. Then during COVID and immediately following it, we got down in the 100, upper 100. So 268 is pretty consistent where we've been. It goes up and down, but really hovers around that point. The interesting thing, though, is what's kind of happened with the billing. I think we've talked in the past, especially Commissioner Munson, the city has changed some of their practices as far as who they're holding and different things like that. So we've seen a reduction in the income from the city of Bismarck, which they were a fairly big player in the detention center. What that has allowed us to do is look at other contract opportunities, which is something I'll elaborate on a little bit here. But so our 2024 billing, we ended at $2,591,063. That's substantial. 23, we were 1.9 million and some change. 22, when I said about those post-COVID numbers, we were down at about 1.4 million. So prior to 23, the highest year we had was 1.8 million. That was during COVID when Department of Corrections wasn't taking their inmates, but it was post prioritization where we got the bill through the legislative session, I believe in 21, I think it was, where the state had to pay for their prisoners. So that was, 21 was good numbers for us. But now when you look, like I said, that's 700,000 less than what we did in 24. The good thing about those numbers is that directly has an effect on the citizens of Burleigh County and on the citizens of Morton County, because the more revenue we bring in to offset the expenses of every prisoner, it definitely drops what it costs us and Morton as counties to run that facility. Overall, the booking numbers remain high, and basically, like I've talked before, the first 24 hours in that facility is the most labor intensive on our staff because they're coming in off the street. It's kind of like if you're a hospital, that's the ER time. They're unpredictable, they're under the influence, possibly in DTs or withdrawals, and so a lot of work goes into those inmates. So that's one thing we track very closely because that kind of tells us staffing levels for the facility also, because once they're through that initial period and put in a cell block, for the most part, they actually become very easy to manage in the big scheme of things, and I'll put an asterisk on that. The Alternatives to Jail is another program I talk about all the time. Those numbers are currently at 309 participants. Those numbers are fairly steady, but they keep rising. The good thing is, excuse me, that's people that typically would be in the jail at our expense for Burleigh and Morton County. So the fact we've got them on alternative programs is a good thing. One thing I want to share with you that I think is pretty important is several years back we started a medication-assisted treatment program out at the jail. Basically, it was coming down the pipe that it was going to be mandated under the American Civil Disabilities Act. And so we partnered with Heartview and then eventually with some others. But to give you an example, what it is basically when you look at opioid-based addictions, people, once they're addicted to an amphetamine-based drug or an opioid-based drug, they're either basically in withdrawal or they're high. And so if you take like a drug that makes somebody anxious, the withdrawal is going to be the opposite. They're going to be lethargic. So if you take a drug that calms somebody down, the withdrawal is they're going to be very amped up. So a term we use in the jail a lot is dope sick. They come in, they're in withdrawal. That's like they got the worst flu that you've ever seen. Very hard on our staff, very hard on that inmate to transition through that period. One of the things that Heartview had gotten into the business of was medication-assisted treatment. And basically what it is it's a drug that helps people become normal. It takes them out of withdrawal. They're not high. And so many of them report that's the first time they've felt normal ever since they became addicts. To give you an example of the work that's being done in our jail by our staff, in 2023, we had 874 doses administered. Heartview or another outside entity comes in and administers that dosage to the people, whether it's methadone or buprenorphine. There's several drugs. But 874 in 23. In 2024, we administered 2,432 doses of methadone in our facility. The good thing is, these people are on these programs. The bad thing is, before we had this program up and running, they came in and they were cut off of that program. So it's truly a step forward, not only to help the inmate, because the theory behind it is you keep them stable, it's going to reduce the chance they're going to go out upon release and reuse. So truly a good program. Again, it's labor intensive. You know, we some of the old school thinking was these drugs, for somebody that's an addict, there's really no benefit to getting high. It actually keeps them from getting high. But somebody that's not an addict could potentially have some impact of getting high sensation. So the old school of thought was we worried about the diversion of those drugs in the facility. We still worry about that, but the benefit far outweighs the risk. So just wanted to share that with you. I found that number very, very interesting, very positive for the work that is being done out there.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is that a voluntary, how is that being implemented? Of doctor's orders, or they decide that, I mean, how does somebody get started?
So, so good question, Commissioner, and I'll kind of explain it. And trust me when I say I was a doubting Thomas. Heartview, I have a great relationship with Heartview, but when they first approached us on this, I was very hesitant. And basically, they made a believer out of me, and I want to share this story because they do a great presentation. But basically, Heartview ran into a situation. You know, in the recovery world, there's a concern sometimes trading a drug for a drug. You know, and is that the right thing to do? You know, then I think you got to look at the quality of life. You know, what's the benefit? So basically, where they made a believer out of me was Heartview would get people that came in wanting to get sober, wanting to get clean, but they couldn't get through the withdrawals. By the time they would get through the withdrawals, they would leave and go get high. And so Kurt Snyder and the staff over there decided there's got to be something we can do to help these people. They implemented medication-assisted treatment. Basically, what happened then is those people could get through that withdrawal and get their head cleared and start getting treatment. The people we're working with currently, and it took me a little bit to get to your question, but the people we're working with currently are in a methadone program or a buprenorphine program already. So all we're doing at this point is continuing that program when they come into our facility, which I think is a huge step forward. Eventually, the goal is to try and get to where we can get people on the program once they're in our facility. You know, but as I'm going to talk in a little bit, staffing dictates everything. And so when you're fighting to just cover shifts and, you know, keep people guarding the prisoners and keeping them safe, it's hard to expand into other areas. So hopefully that answers your question in a roundabout way. There's several community providers. I believe I can't think of the names right now, but Heartview is the biggest one.
Commissioner Woodcock.
When you show us these figures, a lot of the inmates we have, I shouldn't say inmates, but customers, is the Marshal Service and the other counties. When they come in and they put them in our facility, are they high and drunk, just like Bismarck and Mandan inmates, or?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and that's a good question. You know, so what I would say is this. Right now, our biggest customers, and I would say that is the people that we're contracting with. Currently, it's the state prison, it's or the U.S. Marshal Service, and Cass County has been a big player as they've gone through their jail issue. So usually the ones we get like from the Marshal Service, it all depends where they're coming from. Because sometimes they move them from facility to facility. So those people are very stabilized when we get them. One of the things we negotiated, and Major Wongan took the lead on this when we negotiated that new jail contract with the Marshal Service, one of the things we had to remind them is that we have medical facilities, we have a very robust medical staff. So sometimes they would bring problem inmates from a different jail and put them in ours. And so we remind them that, hey, that has to factor in your negotiations into this contract when we got that amount. So for the most part, I would say a lot of our inmates coming in are basically coming off the street, so you don't know what condition they're coming in. The only time I would say, like the Cass County prisoners, or, you know, they're bringing us prisoners from their jail to our jail, so, you know, we know what we're getting at that point. I'll keep going if there's no other questions.
Another quick question.
Commissioner Woodcock.
Does the state offer this program, state prison? Do they offer the same program, the drug treatment program you're talking about, that we do?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and I would say actually they have a little bit of a better program, and the reason I say that is they're dealing with more stability.
Okay.
You know, so they're able to work with the prisoners that are coming in. They're going to be there for an extended period of time, where part of our issue is, you know, especially with enrolling an inmate into this program, we might expend a lot of effort and they're gone the day before we implement it. You know, so we really don't know how long they're going to be in our facilities. So sometimes we got to look at the cost benefit, whereas the prison doesn't have that issue.
Thank you.
About the cost benefit, presumably we're covering the cost of the medications and the administrating, or what?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, no. Currently, the methadone, they're on a program somewhere, so Heartview or whoever comes in and supplies that. If we got into the position where we were going to enroll people, that would be an issue we would have to work through. Potentially, there is funding out there that we could access. The problem is just the other logistics going into it. One of the things we implemented, I think it was in '24, we didn't address it in the budget, but we felt it was a priority. Our nursing staff had come up with some detox protocols, basically, and so that is our cost to provide certain things to these inmates in withdrawal to transition through the withdrawal. The costs are minimal in comparison to the benefit we get out of it. You know, so we're talking like Pedialyte and, you know, some different type of medications they can be given to help with those withdrawals.
Good, thank you.
So, continuing on, I was hoping, and I shared this with Commissioner Bittner, I was hoping to come here and tell you we were fully staffed because we got into the end of the year, and I should never do it. I always seem to jinx myself. But we got into the end of the year. We were looking at like we were going to be fully staffed. Things were very stable. The good thing is on the sheriff's side, we're still that way, which we tend to see less turnover on that side. On the detention side, we're currently 5 down. we lost 5 in a short period of time. To give you kind of an idea what happened, one took a full-time guard position, very tough to compete with that. 2 were recruited by outside law enforcement agencies for a sworn officer position. Again, hard to hold them back from going after their dream. And then we did have 2 terminations in very close proximity. So literally, like, we were coming into December fully staffed. I was truly looking forward to coming here and giving you that news, and now we're right back into hiring. The good thing is we just are in the middle of a hiring process. We had 40 applicants that made it to interviews. The problem we're seeing lately is, and I don't know, I don't think Pam has an answer for it, we're getting a lot of no-shows at the interviews. So I don't know if it's a job service thing where they have to apply for so many jobs and then they don't show up. I don't know what is causing it, and maybe Pam can elaborate on that, but very frustrating. We, several years back, implemented a new thought that basically we will interview every qualified applicant because we want to get those diamonds in the rough too. And but it's frustrating when you have staff dedicating 2.5 days and then half the applicants don't show up. So the good thing is we're looking at hiring for the vacancies plus backfill positions. So we are, initially I was hesitant. As you remember, you have given me authority to hire unfunded backfill positions. We're always cautious as we look at that because if once you hire extra staff, you eat up that budget very quickly, and what I don't want to do is have to come tell you we're over budget. But now, our hiring guy, Sergeant Carvel, always assures me we're going to be fine. Unfortunately, there's going to be turnover. So we're hoping to bring in 9 people. That'd be 5 for the vacancy, 4 backfill. We should be able to manage that throughout the year. I would keep you posted on that. So the good thing, and I'll say it again, I've said it to this board, the good thing is our employees are recruiting good employees. And I think that's a compliment to our staff. They know who they want to work with, and they're out there trying to bring them into our agency. Last thing I'll talk about is we have a governance board meeting coming up on February 7th. We basically usually have a meeting this time of year. The main things we're going to be talking about, and this kind of goes to the contract prisoners and the staffing. So I think we're at a point now where if we ever chose to increase staff, we could do it. There was a time where I'd have told you, don't give us positions because it won't do any good. One of the things I want some guidance on going in from the governance board in the 2026 budget is there is fertile grounds for bed space with prisoners right now. DOCR, if you saw, just entered into an agreement with Grand Forks County to take over a cell block up there. Cass County is probably a year at least away from being able to take their excess prisoners, and they're worried that'll fill up immediately. So we have the opportunity, if we so choose, to where I think we can look at more of these contracts. The Marshal Service is in need of bed space. The good thing, like I said, is every time, we've got some solid fixed costs that whether we have 1 inmate or 500 inmates, those costs don't fluctuate. Heating and cooling the building, that's going to stay the same regardless. If you look at really the expense of additional prisoners is the staffing. We have to have more staff. The meals is a minor factor. It costs us about, off the top of my head, about $8 a day to feed an inmate. So when you look at our contract rates of 115 and 100, and then 75 on the municipalities. So we can bring in, and the more prisoners we have, the cheaper the operation becomes, because, it's an economy of scale at that point. So one of the issues I think that board has to discuss, and then ultimately will come back to the commissions, is do we want to look at contract prisoners, which would require at least, I would say at least 4 additional staff. It would cost us about $400,000 a year for 4 additional staff, but I'm pretty confident we could bring in 100 extra prisoners overnight at $100 a day. So,
Commissioner Buckin.
What would that do to some of the ancillary costs? Because I know we've had in the past conversations about the board plans and food contracts and stuff. What would that look like from those perspectives? So some of the, not the set costs that, whether it's 1 or 500, but the additional food costs and anything else like that.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, like I said, the food would be really a small factor. Obviously, it would go up.
But there's
it's about-
food and medical and all
Yeah,
that, so.
I think when you look at the cost of those different budget line items, it would be small in comparison to our fixed costs.
And fully covered under the contract then?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Well, let me say this. So when you look at how we calculate the average daily cost of an inmate, we're taking in factors such as depreciation and everything. You look at it like a business. So when you look at that cost, when we calculated that pre-inflation, we were about 135. So our rates aren't there. But again, some of that cost is depreciation on the building and, different wear and tear that we're going to have naturally anyways. So one of the things when I look and say at the end of the year, let's just say arbitrarily 50,000 inmate nights, and I couldn't tell you without looking what it is. And then I look at what we spend on the budget. My goal is to make sure that Burleigh and Morton County are not out of whack compared to our contract holders. And what I mean by that is obviously we're going to have a little more skin in the game. It's our jail. And like I've said before, we got to be careful with the daily rates because there's other jails that people can transport prisoners. So if we price ourselves out of business, they'll go to Kidder County, or not Kidder, Stutzman County, they'll go to Stark County. And so we want to make sure that
We're competitive.
we're competitive. So one of the things that I'm, and actually I had a good conversation, before we would look at bringing that staff on, I would want some guarantees of prisoner numbers. So let's say like we enter into an agreement with the state, they would have to guarantee us some numbers for us to justify bringing on additional staff. Right now, at the numbers we're at, we could go to probably about, let's just say that mid 325, just throw that out arbitrarily. 325 to 340, probably right in there, would put a strain on our existing staffing levels. But we're sitting right now, we had to open up one pod that we had shut down because of staffing and population levels. But now we had to open it back up. So there's a lot of empty space in that cell block we could be capitalizing on. One other thing, real quick, we're going to address housing rates with the committee. We had set those housing rates, and we had varying housing rates. I think we need to look at that, make sure we either, because again, this was all pre-inflation. And basically, unfortunately, the Marshall contract set, but we need to look at some of those other contracts. And then the last thing, addressing with the board, and I think you're going to talk about it a little later here, is make them aware of maintenance vacancy, and so we're staying on top of that.
Yeah, we'll cover that in a little bit. little bit more detailed pretty quick.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Woodcox.
I read in the, I think it was in the paper, or maybe I heard it on the news, but is there another prison being proposed? $450 million was allocated potentially to build another prison beside the one we've got. Is that in the mill, and can you tell us anything about that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, so there's a couple things going on legislatively. Obviously, I gave you the overview on what they're trying to do with Grand Forks County to kind of be a stopgap. The other thing, the Heart of the River Correctional Center, the female prison is going to be opening in the near future. There is discussion about building I believe it's a medium security facility down at the State Farm. I know there'll be some opposition to that, just because that land. One of the things, at the legislative session is Attorney General Drew Wrigley has a bill looking at some mandatory sentences and some different things. The other thing we're running into is, they're locking up more violent prisoners. So like they say, every time a new life sentence is given, the prison has one less bed. So they're really looking at that medium security inmate and where do they put them, and trying to come up, because there's a housing crisis going on in corrections. We're sitting good, thank goodness, with the jail we have. The problem is we have a staffing issue. But I guess what I would say, my only concern with all of this is when you look at the amount of corrections-related jobs in Burleigh and Morton County. We've got Center Incorporated, we've got the State Farm, we've got the prison, we've got the detention center. You start adding up all these facilities, and there's not a surplus of people wanting to go into these professions. So I think location becomes a factor too. If it doesn't, then obviously you're gonna have me here harping that we need to keep our salaries up so that we're stealing from everybody else. I don't know if it was all good news.
I'm not going to say what I was thinking.
Not with that grin.
You know that look, huh? Any other questions? Okay, I think it was just a report, so there's no
Yes.
motions or anything? Okay.
I would like to add that pursuing other contracts, I would be very much in favor of that, because maximizing for our constituents and mitigating some of the costs out there is always a good thing. So if you're looking for a recommendation from the board, that would be my 2 cents.
Well, for what it's worth, that's about word for word what I said.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty easy to come to that conclusion. Anybody else have an issue with that? Consensus of the board, I think, is for
Chairman.
Commissioner Woodcox.
I have no problem with that at all. I think it's a good idea, but when you look back at the numbers that he presented, and you look at Mandan dates and Bismarck, they've figured out that they can they take people in, arrested of some kind, and they let them out without bringing them to us. So they're cutting down on their expense, which means Burleigh County picks up the additional expense. So we got to be careful with that, because it doesn't seem, we built this for everybody to use, and they figured out how they can get around using the facility we built. And that bothers me, and that the citizens of Burleigh County end up getting, instead of our 70% of the cost, we end up getting 90 or 95% of the cost, so.
Well, I think these other contracts are a great way to offset that. Yeah.
That's a good
Right.
way to do it.
I think that's also something that the citizens want to pay attention to, because if you're just you're arresting somebody, bringing them in, and then turning them loose right away, I think that's what you're referring to.
Right. They don't even,
Well, that's
they don't
probably
even
not-
hit the
that's
door
probably
at our
not
place.
helping.
They're letting them out on the street again. And
Yeah,
maybe
see, that's
it's
probably not helping out on the streets, you know? Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? All right, thank you, Kelly. Okay, the next thing is a continuation of auditor-treasurer discussion. I don't know if wanted to add anything in particular at this point, but I did contact Burleigh County State's Attorney Lawyer and asked her if she would assist with drafting up a preliminary resolution and a preliminary plan for converting the auditor treasurer office to an appointed position. And I believe she has some information to share with us on that. State's Attorney Lawyer.
Thank you, Commissioners. I did have a couple of things on this. The first one is that I did get a letter back from the Office of Special Counsel where they found that there was no Hatch Act violation as reported regarding Mr. Splonskowski. Basically, what the letter says is they concern themselves with partisan elections, and because this was a nonpartisan election, they didn't look at it any further. So there was that. And then the second thing that I put together, which I did send as an email this afternoon, I did put together a rough draft of a preliminary resolution along with a plan and then some further information regarding redesignating the Office of Auditor Treasurer to a appointed position as opposed to an elected position. And where did I put that? So basically, it's a draft for your review to take a look at. Let me know if there's anything that you'd like to change. The preliminary resolution basically just talks about what we had talked about regarding that position before, that they were combined into one position effective May 5th, 2003, that their primary duties are the Chief Financial Officer, Elections Officer, Secretary to the County Commission, keeping track of all property taxes, and to act as the accountant, financial manager, and investor for the county. That the qualifications for an auditor or a treasurer is that the candidate must be a qualified elector of the county, which means they have to be 18 years old and a resident of the county. Those are the only qualifications for those offices. And that the Home Rule Charter that was passed June 11th, 2024 does indicate the Board of County Commissioners can follow state law to convert an elected office into an appointed office. And so the resolutions would be that effective April 1st, 2027, and in accordance with the details of the plan, that the Office of Burleigh County Auditor Treasurer be redesignated as an appointed office. The reason for April 1, 2027 is that any redesignation of an office can't take effect until after the current term is done. The treasurer's term begins May 1st of the year following the election. The auditor's term begins April 1st following the election. And historically, once we combine those offices, that term started April 1st. So April 1st, 2027 would be the first April 1st after the next election, which is why it's that date. And then the other resolution is that a copy of the resolution and accompanying plan filed with the auditor, treasurer, and published as required, and then having public hearings. So the plan is pretty basic. I mean, if you're moving an elective office to an appointed office, it just redesignates it as that appointed office. It indicates the Human Service Director the Human Resources Director shall develop a job description to include statutory job duties of the county auditor and the county treasurer, along with job qualifications, including experience in either finance or accounting, which would be appropriate, and then to put it in the appropriate pay grade, and then have that plan approved by the Burleigh County Commission no later than 60 days after the final resolution. I said that because if the Commission does want to move forward with this preliminary resolution, prospectively putting together a job description could be done as public hearings were being held and can be discussed during that time too. So something should be ready to be presented as an official job description if the County Commission decides to adopt that plan within 60 days after the adoption of that plan. Of course, that can be modified as well. And then I also included that recruitment or retention of the office shall be governed by the policy manual that we have for all positions within the county. So that's the basic resolution and the basic plan. The other information that I included in the email to you this afternoon for discussion today is just taking a look at what other counties are doing. So I looked to see what counties have elected auditors or treasurers and appointed auditors and treasurers, since ours is a combined office. So if you look, most of the counties have an elected position, but some counties do have that converted to an appointed position already. Cass County has a combined auditor and treasurer, which is an appointed position. Grand Forks County is combined. Lemoore is combined as well. Nelson County, Pierce County, combined and appointed. Richland, Stutzman, Towner, Walsh, Ward, and Wells all have appointed auditors or auditor-treasurer combinations. I looked further to see when those things took place, when they moved from elected to appointed. Cass County was in 2018. From their website, I found that that they indicate the Cass County Finance Director is what they call their position, which is an appointed position. The last time that there were reports on the state election site for county auditor or treasurer from Cass County was 2014. I did find news articles from the public hearings that Cass County had in 2017 when they converted their office over from an elected to an appointed position. And some of the comments that were made during that were the same ones that we've had as well, that there really aren't any qualifications for that position and that should scare the public that someone with absolutely no qualifications could run for office and hold that office. Grand Forks County, that one was the current auditor. I found a YouTube video with her explaining what she does, and she was appointed in 2003. So that one was prior to 2003 that they converted their office. Lemoore County was converted in 2017. Nelson was the last time election results were reported for that position was in 2018, which means they converted that to an appointed position in 2022. Pierce County, Richland County, Stutzman County, I couldn't find results for their county elections because the Secretary of State started reporting county-specific offices for election starting in the 2010 election cycle. So any elections before that only gave results for like the big offices for state, not specific county races. So I know theirs was prior to 2010 because there were no reported results for elections for auditor or treasurer in those counties after or 2010 or later. Towner County, the last time theirs was reported was 2010, so it appears they converted theirs to an appointed office in 2014. Walsh County was 2012. Ward County, which is Minot, it says the Ward County Auditor's Office consolidated the County Treasurer's Office in 1996. And so their auditor-treasurer position, it says, had been elected for a number of years, but became an appointed position effective the first Monday in April 2002. And then Wells County was in 2022. So some of them are fairly recent. Some of them have been in existence as an appointed office for quite some time, specifically Grand Forks and Ward County from the early 2000s. Again, what I found was that it was kind of the same consideration that there was really no qualifications that were needed to hold that office, and given the responsibility for that office, that's why they converted theirs. So I did provide that to you for discussion, and if you have any changes or anything you want me to make or you want to discuss that further, we certainly can.
I don't see any changes. I think you did a good job of the preliminary thing. I want to thank you for doing that because I know it ate up your time over the weekend. I apologize for
That's
the
all
burden,
right.
but thank you for stepping up and helping with that. Commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Well, my question is,
Mr. Schwab?
how many of these is it necessary for a county to have the treasurer and the auditor under one person?
I can speak to that.
No, it's not required. Go ahead, sorry.
She's right, it's not required, but I actually talked to the previous auditor Glott about that question. And he said that the reason that they did that to begin with was because essentially the treasurer works for the first 2 months of the year, like January and February, receiving taxes, because the job of the treasurer is to receive the taxes. And then at that point, that gets turned over to the auditor's office for dispersing and handling, and essentially the treasurer has almost nothing left to do the rest of the year. And so that was seen at the time when it was combined, and It was in the 90s. I don't know if it's 96 or 98.
I think officially we did it in 2003, maybe. I think there was something in the 80s, and then there was the
Started.
combination of the offices in 2003.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that.
Yeah, it's been quite a while, but the whole point was that it was more efficient operation because the treasurer was being paid basically for a year's worth of work when really there was 2 months' worth of work.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Woodcox.
When we look at the job itself, that person, or if you talk about the treasurer or auditor, both, are dealing with millions and millions and millions of your taxpayer dollars. They're not just ours, they're taxpayer dollars. And to have the person that's in charge of that, they've got their hands on it every day. They should have it on there every day, handling our investments and handling the bonds and the whole thing. It's really complicated, and to have somebody that only has to be 18 years old to be elected to that position, just it bugs me that could happen. And that has happened in the past, not just our current situation, but we had one or two before. But anyway, we need somebody that's in there that has knowledge, they have experience, they have some qualifications in business or CPA or auditing or whatever it might be, that knows what they're doing when they walk in the door on April 1st when they're put in. If they don't know what they're doing, they immediately fall behind. You're in a hole right away. And it's just imperative that we have somebody that has pre-qualification before they're elected. And you'd like to think when there's election and there's two people running or three, whatever it might be, that the voters would look at those qualifications that those candidates have and say, hey, this guy's better qualified than this one, male or female, whatever it might be. But to me, we've got to move forward on this and go back to an appointed position where at least 5 of us, and we don't have to have any qualifications either, but we don't have the hands-on dollar. We don't handle the money like they do, and like he does or she. And I think it's very, very important that we appoint somebody that we can look at their qualifications. Are they a CPA? Have they had 10 years of business experience or related experience? And then get a person in there that is qualified that can start running from April 1st and not get behind by 3, 4, 5 months and then say, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? And then a lot of times nothing happens. They don't do anything, and here we sit, and that's what we've been into. And we still haven't gotten out of that, but I think we're getting there. But anyway, I think we've got to move forward on this. I really do.
Commissioner Schwab.
Well, I kind of had the same problem up at the weed board. You come in, well, not qualified, come in, not qualified, or same thing that Kelly was talking about. One guy come in and he had posted resumes in other sites and got hired. But if a person would make a change like this, my theory kind of got proven in the sense that if you're looking at somebody that has the experience and was working for a county, and all of a sudden he's not working for the county, I really question their qualifications in the sense that what I'm thinking is I think you would have to start this person out 3 or 4 months ahead of when they get their appointment starts to get them up to speed. And that's what we did up at the weed department, because nobody's going to walk in here and know exactly what to do. They're going to have to get up to speed.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of training they could be doing, and of course we'd have to pay them for that, their time training and stuff, but I think that would be something to consider.
Commissioner Munson.
Julie, you had talked about public meetings that we would need to hold prior. Is this a 9-month process? Is this a 12-month process? What would your recommendation be to go through that so that the public understands our concerns and supports or doesn't support this issue?
So Cass County was the most recent one that had converted their office that I was able to find a lot of information about. And like I said, that was basically some old newspaper articles, some old notices in the newspaper. And it looked like they held public hearings as part of their commission meetings, like either on the first or the second commission meeting. They kept it consistent. I believe it was on maybe the first one that they had of the month, and then did that for several months in a row, just so people were used to the idea of this is when we're going to discuss it, come in and we can discuss it. You don't have to hold just public hearings. You can also hold like, I can't remember exactly what the statute says. It's public hearings, it's like community outreach types of things where you just have like a question and answer session or kind of like a roundtable discussion or things like that. So there are multiple things that you can do. I would suggest that you have meetings, public hearings for a couple of months, just so that you can get as much of the public who has an interest in it to come in to give their opinions on it, and that way there can be discussion about it on both sides, so that you can make an informed decision as to whether you want to go forward with it or not. So it looked like they had held, they being Cass County, had held meetings in August, September, and October, and then moved forward with theirs. They had a home rule charter that allowed them to do it by ordinance as opposed to by resolution, the way we're doing it through the statute, and so they handled it a little differently. But they did have those 3 months worth of public meetings, and so, or public hearings, excuse me, and so I would suggest that as at least a minimum.
Makes sense. Commissioner Woodcock.
Quickly, you mentioned their home rule charter. Are we sure our home rule charter does not allow us to do that?
Yes, our home rule charter specifically says that the county commission is allowed to follow the law, the century code, to redesignate that office. So it doesn't give any shortcuts basically to do that by ordinance. You have to follow the century code to do it through a resolution.
Unless we amend our home rule charter.
Right, but that's the hard way.
That's definitely.
I
Another
asked
quick
the
question.
same question, and she said, what she just said, I said.
Not that easy.
Are you sure? She says, well, I wrote it. Right? Go
If I
ahead,
might
Commissioner.
continue, this would not be the only appointed position we have. I mean, we have the weed board person and the veterans officer and the highway department. They're all appointed. I think we got like 8 or 9 that are
Well, you
appointed.
also-
Emergency manager, and so it's not like this would be the only appointed position. We're not doing something unique. It's just something we're doing to make it more efficient for.
Correct, and I would point out one that's kind of similar would be like the county coroner. You'd want somebody with medical experience
Right.
to be your county coroner. I mean, by statute, you have to have that, because that's a specialized job, and you'd need some medical knowledge to be able to do that job, just like you should have some financial knowledge to do the chief operating officer, chief financial officer of the county.
Thank you.
Or the sheriff, or
Mr. Chair, one more
Commissioner
question for you,
Munson.
Julie. So, after a series of public hearings, we move forward, if we decide to move forward to this, it does go to the public for a vote? Is that correct?
No, you do a final resolution, and once
Okay.
that final resolution is published, then if the public wants to have that go to a vote, they can do it by filing a petition
Oh.
opposing it. And so what happens is if they file a petition opposing it, then it actually comes back before the commission to see whether or not you want to rescind your final resolution. If you don't want to rescind your final resolution, then it goes on the ballot.
Okay, so it's still a public vote on the ballot?
They could, if they wanted, yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And so the real issue is because of, we want to take our time, make sure we would have enough public hearings and meetings and opportunity to get the, let's say, the ducks in a row on the thing and get to a final resolution on what we would consider to be the job description, because there's kind of a heavy lift to just get there and to have it right. I was particularly surprised when State's Attorney Lawyer was telling me about how many counties actually have appointed. I didn't know that. And I guess we're not covering any new ground. It's just that, I think it's important that we move forward yesterday.
Well, my suggestion would be that as you're moving forward, that any final resolution should be done prior to the end of the year, because this position would open up for candidacy, filing or circulating petitions January 1. And so at least that way, people would know kind of where we're going and can make a decision as to what they want to do by
Yeah.
January 1,
And
2026.
I think that's fair, and that's why I think moving forward sooner is better than later.
Mr. Chairman, what type of a resolution would you think, right now, today, what do we need to do to move this forward?
You can take time, I mean, you can table it if you want to review that preliminary resolution, since I didn't get it out to you until this afternoon.
I saw it.
Or you can act on the preliminary resolution today, because this is just a preliminary resolution, and again, it gets printed in the paper for 2 consecutive, well, it's actually once per week for 2 weeks within a 30-day period after it's adopted. And so if you did adopt the preliminary resolution today, it would have to be printed twice in the paper, and then you can start having public hearings. And so, and then you can modify it as we go on too, based on public opinion or things that you think of or your discussions.
Mr. Chairman, personally, we just picked it up this afternoon, so I read part of it, and I haven't read it just now. And I would like to wait for another 2 weeks. It's not going to put a real bind in our calendar if we want to get this done by the end of the year. So I would move we table till the next meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to table till the next meeting. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
No.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
No. Motion carries. We're going to have that on the agenda for the next meeting. Next thing is an audit discussion. I contacted 4 accounting firms. Contacted Ide Bailey, Brady Martz, Haga Comer, and Widmer Roll, and questioned them on the rates and what they would take as far as a forensic audit. I don't have a summary of that. I think I would provide those things to either the finance director or the HR director or somebody to kind of put something together as far as determining which one is, because their prices are, the partners of one firm, their price is really high if they're working on it, and then their kind of worker bees are a little lower, and the other ones, their upper guys are lower, but their lower guys are higher. So I couldn't really make a whole lot of sense out of it yet. But only 2 firms provided me with a proposal for moving forward, and it was Ide Bailey and Brady Martz. And because the other 2 firms specifically said they do not do forensic audits. They're, yep. Probably wanna
Since
hop
I'm
in
the
there.
one, if I could address the commission, since I'm the one that brought that up in the first place. When I did suggest that, I wasn't aware that the audit by the state auditor would look at the finances that in depth to see where they're going and if there is any anomalies in that. I would suggest that you table any type of forensic evaluation of the books or anything until after the state auditor has done their audit. And if they find something that would warrant a further investigation, then move forward on that. Since the auditor is going to be doing at least that basic look into the books to make sure there isn't anything that it looks like fraud or anything suspicious, I don't think it's necessary to do a forensic evaluation at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Woodcock.
when our state auditor was here, we asked that question, does a normal audit address those problems, the investments and the amount and where they're at and our spreading them out and all that whole thing? They don't do any of that with a regular audit. So you're saying we are going to get a different audit or a more intensive audit this time?
My understanding was that if we requested that they look at some of those things, that they would look at those. That was what I understood from him, that yes, they would do that, but only if there was something that prompted them to look at that. So I think if we request that, I think that should be the first step, is we can request that they take a look at those types of things, like the accounting procedures and how they worked, and then if they see any anomalies with the use of those accounting procedures, and then we can go from there. But if we specifically request that, it sounds like they'll do that. That was my understanding anyway from when he was here.
I think the ordinary audit, if I remember right, would be around April.
When does it,
Is that,
Yeah, it sounds correct.
and so,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
when you two proposals you did get, was there any kind of ballpark numbers that we might, are we looking at $20,000 or $120,000? What are we looking at? Do we know?
no, they both said roughly the same thing. Is there any problem if I forward those emails for information purposes?
Or you can just discuss them out in the open, and then
Yeah.
that way we all have it. I think there was like a,
Okay, I'll see if I can, I thought I'd sit down and do that later, but this is way back here.
Commissioner Bittner did share those with me, and I believe they both wanted like a down payment of
Right.
either $5,000 or $10,000, and then they were gonna charge an hourly rate for as long as it would take, and of course, from that deposit and then further, but they couldn't say how long it was gonna take or how much time they would need to invest to do that, and so it really was kind of up in the air, other than that first retainer, pretty much. Which is, yeah.
When you get into that sort of a question and that sort of a thing, that is the way it's done. That's not a,
Right.
I wasn't surprised.
They're not
to
gonna
hear
give
that
you
at
a
all.
plain, this is gonna be it. They'll give you.
No,
No.
they don't have the
Cost plus
ability.
so much an hour,
Yeah, they don't have, like this one, this was Brady Mertz. Their retainer is 5,000. And then they take that retainer and basically set it aside, and then they start doing the work, and then they take their hourly rates off of that 5,000 until either they're done or they've spent it and come back for more or something. And so the final cost of the project is difficult to determine, it said. Following up on our call from this morning, here are our hourly rates. CFE staff is $150 an hour, and the shareholder is $310 an hour. And so then they also have, and both of them had the same sort of thing, is that they have a kind of a technology fee, in this case based on 5% of our billed services, and 2 based on the number of bank transactions we run through our specific forensic software. And they say they're in the process of switching their software and are working on determining the per transaction fee. When it comes to a forensic exam, the scope will be tailored based on where the concerns are. We will meet with the parties involved to gain an understanding of the issues at hand and determine our procedures based on those discussions and the information available. So that's basically what that one. If you want to talk about something else in the meantime, we sure could, because I'm going to have to
Well, I'll
find
fill
this.
in the blanks then. And then, so basically, I think if we wait until the auditor does that, the state auditor does that audit, if there are concerns, they could narrow down where those concerns are, which would narrow down the focus of any outside audit as well, which would cut down on costs as well.
Right.
Which is another reason to wait until the state auditor does their audit and request that they do.
I would
specific
have to
one.
agree that I think that would make it so we could focus more clearly on what we're
Yeah, I think just saying point and shoot is probably not the most effective.
okay, so this was Ide Bailey. This letter outlines the understanding of the terms and objectives of the consulting engagement between Ide Bailey and Burleigh County. We're engaged to provide forensic accounting. You want me to kind of fast forward a little bit through this?
Yeah,
This one's a little
okay.
bit longer.
I know what you,
Okay. They put out all the specifications and basically the boilerplate. The fees. Said while professional fees should be reasonable, they must be representative of the professional quality of the services to be provided. Our fees are based upon the amount of time required to complete the assignment and level of personnel assigned. The fees for our forensic accounting service will be as follows: $425 per hour for partners, directors, senior managers, $350 per hour for managers, and $250 per hour for associates and staff. If you request that we issue a deliverable or provide additional services, we'll pay in full in advance. Okay, and it just goes on kind of more boilerplate. So that was and theirs was the $10,000 retainer. And so if you look at that and can make some sense of it, I couldn't really determine which one was better or not. Commissioner Buckin?
No, I think it makes a lot of sense to wait until the state auditor's completed. So if we can narrow a scope, if there are some flags that pop up to warrant this, narrowing the scope is going to save a lot of dollars.
Right. Along those lines, we're already doing that, even in the absence of an audit and whatnot, and because we have our own finance director and we have a good understanding of what's been going on with the accounting and the whole thing, we're actually creating that list already. So we're not going to be surprised, I don't think.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Can, our finance director is here, can I ask his opinion? Do we need a forensic audit, or have
Thank
you had
you.
any experience with it, or
Thank you, Julie.
anything like that? Just,
I have found fraud in the course of my work, not here, but in another entity. I would not be doing that work. I do have concerns about the ARPA issue that we had a couple weeks back, where basically on our financial statements, we represented that we had done something that we had not done. And that is a concern because of we averted this, but the potential financial loss of getting to the deadline and losing our funding. So I do have concerns about that. That may be some place to start, and that is somewhere where we can sit down with the audit manager at the state auditor's office and say, can you guys look at this? And or can you at least give us your work papers from last year where you audited this grant? But I think we can sit down with them and ask them to specifically look at this and maybe even revisit this, as in open up an audit of this, or a review of this section of our books from last year and go over it a second time. Now, I don't know if they're going to want to do that or not, because they did issue the clean opinion last year. So maybe that would rise to the level of having to reissue the report. I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that or not. But we will ask them about that specific issue,
Right.
certainly, yeah.
Okay, that kind of gets us to the end of the audit discussion, because it was more for informational purpose, so we all know kind of where we're at with that.
so do we need a motion to go ahead and wait for the state audit?
I don't know.
Give him some direction, or?
We made a motion, a second, in the past to get pricing for further discussion. I think that was my understanding, was to get pricing and discuss it further. So
Don't need it.
I'm not seeing a need to do anything right now, because I like the idea of working with the state audit and whatnot, and we'll find out if there's a justified need, which there may be, but we'll know more after that.
I'm just thinking that if they're looking into things that they didn't look at before in a normal audit, they're gonna charge us more money, so that's money expenditure that we're gonna have to approve. Now, whether we approve it now or wait for
I see.
the end of the audit, and they say, here's another 30,000 you owe us, or whatever it might be. That'll be money we have to spend, and we should spend. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I want to move this along. That's my point. I don't want to sit here and wait for another 6 months before we make a final decision, because this is so critical. And I'm not convinced that we're doing the proper thing today, because we're taking in millions right now in taxpayer dollars on property tax right now. Are we doing the proper thing now, today or tomorrow, whatever it might be? Are we getting some interest off all that money that we're taking in? So I need some assurance that that's happening too.
You might want to have a conversation with the finance director about that.
Okay.
I think there's some things you need to know, and I would suggest you probably want to find out directly from the.
Well, I don't know that I'd be the only one that wants to answer the question. I think the taxpayers need to know that we're doing things right. So could I ask our Finance Director, are we doing the proper thing right now? I
Well,
mean, we've been at this investigation for
yeah.
8, 10 months. Are we investing our money properly now?
So right now, one of the things we are doing properly is we are intaking a ton of money from the school district and the city. And the way that we do it is that comes in, we're required to remit that money. I think it's in Century Code, but for example, the school is, I think, the 10th business day. So what we're doing properly is we're intaking the money, it's going into a money market, and then we set up a bank transfer for that 10th day. So we make sure that we are getting interest on that money for the maximum amount of time, and we're allowed to do that. And so that aspect of it is good for the county and I think for the taxpayers. And because we don't have a management fee, we're just required to do this by the Century Code. So it does help to kind of grease the skids a little bit. We, as in my office, has been working with the county auditor's office now during this transition time. We've had a deputy retire, and so we've been working with them. We've worked through some issues specifically related to the property tax intake. And so I do think that the money's going from A to B to C, where it's, on time.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Commissioner
continue?
Rickard.
When you say we're putting it daily into a money market, that's a sweep account we've got, right?
That's correct.
What's that money market paying?
I think it's about 4.3.
It's not
right now.
1 point or 0.08 or
No,
something
this
like
is a
that.
good one. This is good. This is Wells Fargo. They've done a good job for us.
Okay.
So I think it's about 4.3. And
That's-
it's really, I don't think we can put that in a longer-term investment
No,
because
we
we
don't.
have to give it.
Because we have to pay it out within 10 days.
Yeah. 10 days
10 days.
following the month.
As long as we're
of
doing that,
collection.
we're
Right.
real more comfortable with what we're doing, so.
Okay. Answers your questions.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab. Lee, I think you had a question for you. You're not getting off the hook.
I'm hungry.
Who makes the decision on where you're gonna put this money, and does that go through you?
No, that goes through the treasurer.
Okay.
We have made some recommendations recently about the 1 cent sales tax and how to handle that, but that's all the authority of the treasurer.
Do you get any confirmation that this stuff is going the way it's supposed to?
This month, I'm pretty confident about because I was down there the day that we made the transfer. So I was assisting staff and working through. We were having some reconciliation issues. So I was assisting staff, and so I was there when they made the call and transferred the money on the 10th of January. So I'm pretty confident about that one at least.
Right, for what it's worth, just so you know, we've been working together on that particular question because we wanted to ensure that whoever was handling that in that office was getting the benefit of the guidance from the finance department, even though it's not their wheelhouse. So we've been trying to make sure that all of the resources that are available that were necessary for keeping this thing on the tracks is happening, and I really want to thank Lee and Taylor for their assistance with that because they've been going out of their way. And as well as the tax director, Al Vietmeyer, he came in on a weekend and did some stuff on his own that Burleigh County had to have done. And he didn't have to do that, but he did. And I want you to understand, commissioners, additional staff is going the extra mile and doing everything they can to assure that Burleigh County is meeting its obligations. So I want to thank you guys. Any other questions for Lee? Okay, thanks, Lee. Appreciate that. Buildings and grounds discussion. We've been learning a little bit of stuff that we didn't know before now that Kevin Quinn has announced that he's retiring effective February 14th. Running into some additional things that would happen anytime somebody retires. So we need some additional staff at the maintenance level. And I'm not sure, Pam can correct me here, but my recommendation was to advertise for the maintenance 2 position with an underfill. And then in our packet, we have the building and grounds director discussion or job description. And we also have the building maintenance tech 2 and everything we talked about before, because I think, although I haven't looked at it exactly, I believe Pam was incorporating the things that we talked about at the last meeting. Pam, you might want to come up, but just so that you know, we had a meeting out at the detention center today that related to some oversight. So once Kevin retires and he's gone in a couple weeks, that I have, my suggestion at this point is that we take the maintenance staff goes under the direction of, in this case, I'll say the sheriff or his designee for a period until we can get a grounds director or somebody hired to fill that position. In the case of the jail, it might be, Trent, or it might be somebody else, because there's things like ordering parts, ordering chemicals, soaps, I don't know, all kinds of things that require somebody to be accountable for the money and how it's being spent in the budgets. And so I felt that this time it'd be appropriate to have those guys functioning under the most closest director level person to where they're working. And I'm thinking maybe the courthouse and Burleigh East is the same way. We don't have them integrated into the highway department yet. The Provident building, we'll have to have a discussion on. I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody in there, whether it be Pam or Lee or Tom or somebody, kind of your go-to person if you have questions. And so there's things like, who's going to handle the time cards and whatnot. And so I talked to the sheriff's department, talked to Kelly, and he says, well, he and Pam could kind of work that out. How are you handling time cards? And since the sheriff's department is already handling a bunch of them, having a couple of them additional probably isn't going to be too much of a burden, but I'm just bringing that out here for some discussion, so hopefully Pam can take off on that, or?
Well, I really don't have anything more than what we discussed in the meeting last week on the buildings and grounds. I put the director position and also the building and grounds tech 2 position in the packet, because at one time when we had originally talked to one of the maintenance people and he brought up the concerns, we thought maybe we were we're a short one, pretty much, a building tech 2.
Yep.
And now I don't know if that's changed. I wasn't in this meeting today, so I don't.
I would agree with that, especially if you're considering that we're looking at the possibility of adding the highway department building to the whole building portfolio. We're not long on staff, let's put it that way.
No.
And we don't have, current staff has expressed that they're not interested or willing to move up to a supervisory role. And so that doesn't help us a whole lot. I believe we need the maintenance 2 with a possible underfill if need be, or if we could get a foreman in there or something. I mean, plus advertise for the director for buildings and grounds.
Yeah. It's
That's
hard to
right.
know which one you need first, because if you recruit for the building and tech 2 position, you have a person there, but what happens if you get the director and they want to go a different direction? But I do agree we are short with our building techs.
I think Kelly wants to add something.
I didn't take enough of your time earlier, so I want another shot at it.
All right.
If I could suggest, and we kind of talked about this, Commissioner Bittner, I would like to see us do the buildings and grounds person first, if possible. And I'm not sure where Marcus is at on his thinking. But that way, that person, kind of like Pam's alluding to, I think, they could help decide what's needed as far as staffing levels. Not that we don't need this additional person, but from our perspective, I would really like to get somebody that can oversee that and help us with the projects at the jail. Just my thought.
I think we should do them both. That's kind of my, I don't see it, I think it should just get on with it, you know.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Whitcutt.
So you're thinking, Pam may be thinking the same thing. We need one supervisor for all of our buildings. Maintenance supervisor for the highway department in the east, and you and the courthouse and Provident Life, throw that all into one bucket, and there would be one supervisor over the whole thing.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that is what I would like to see. I think Marcus is in agreement. Pam, because kind of what we've talked about a little bit up here is, Burleigh East, we're kind of on our own out there, and this remodel project, we had to educate ourselves, and that's where I would like to see a buildings and grounds person that has that background. I think I explained to Commissioner Bittner, we had a situation with the parking lot out at the jail where, we were driving that maintenance, and we needed to crack seal and stripe, and we got a little off track there. So personally, I think one person to oversee all the buildings would be good. We're getting to that size, and there can be some, economy of motion where one thing we're trying to do, and Kevin did help us with this, but, some of the consolidation, so we're not just buying for the jail, we're buying for the courthouse and Burleigh East, the highway department. They're all big buildings.
Yeah, and that's where you gotta look at the scale of what we're doing, so if one guy's over here negotiating something, and, if you had the oversight, or, the economy of scale would just be so much better. Commissioner Bakken?
Yeah, and, that position, replacing Kevin, is probably going to take a while to find the right person. So I would suggest that we move forward with not only that position, but the other ones as well. I would concur with that. So, I mean, if you want that in a motion,
Yeah,
I
I do.
would so move to fill all the positions.
Okay. I have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to fill, essentially it's two positions.
Yeah, and
it's
that
gonna be
right replacement for Kevin might take a while.
Sure.
So we need to move forward on that now.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, budget-wise, do we have another maintenance tech in our budget? And what are we looking at, the difference between Kevin's pay versus a facilities director?
We don't
How
have
is that in,
We don't
how are
have
we
that
handling in the
information.
budget?
We don't have that information yet. Pam, you got some insight?
And with the ballpark, we do not have the buildings and tech 2 in the budget anywhere. Kevin's position, we might have to go up a little bit from what he's making if we want a facilities director.
I assumed, but,
But just because of his longevity, it's kind of ballpark. It's not going to be up a lot.
okay,
Yeah, it's
that's not that much of a concern.
not really.
Okay,
Getting stuff fixed is the concern. Having enough staff to.
His
to
longevity
keep up.
push that out.
Right.
So.
You see,
And
like,
economies of scale.
one of the guys was in at the courthouse at 1:30 this morning and hadn't gotten a break since then because the boiler, the one original boiler that's still there, remember we did, a replacement on one real quick while we could. Well, that handles more of the sheriff's department, but when he got there, the temperature in the courthouse this morning was 46 degrees. And so he was working feverishly to get the thing back on. It was a pressure-related problem. They were able to get it operational and whatnot. But the point was, he was there at 1:30 this morning, but he was also there at this meeting this afternoon out at the jail. And so nobody was able to
Right.
cover for him. He's on call, and he's got the long haul. And, there's things just happen.
Yeah, we
And-
need to get these filled.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Munson.
yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries.
So that's
Thank
what
you.
Julie was all bundled up.
Oh, yeah, it was, okay, I told my wife that it was gonna be a kind of a short meeting.
Oh,
She
yeah,
wanted to go
yeah,
out to
yeah.
eat, but anybody got any other business for the benefit of Burleigh
Chair, I
County?
got one quick one.
Commissioner Munson.
I want to remind everybody about the North Dakota Tax primary resident credit. I asked Mary this morning to get that hyperlink put on our website so that it's there, so our residents can get that application in for their $500 credit from the state.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Told you it'd be quick.
Yeah.